I call this April 22nd, 2021 special call board meeting of education to order at this time. I would like Dr. Dorr to call the roll for us, please.
You'll hold on one second while I fix this situation. It won't let me mute.
What about just turning the volume all the way up?
All right. I apologize. Ms. Frances Boomer?
Here.
Ms. Naomi Clark?
Here.
Mr. Victor Dove has indicated he's at a funeral today. Mr. Carol Ipock?
Present.
Ms. Stephanie King is also, I think, presiding at a funeral today.
She is.
Ms. Kelly Muse?
Here.
Ms. Kimberly Smith?
Here.
Chairman, we have 5 members present, 2 absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Dorr. At this time, I would ask to get a motion to adopt the 2021 Board of Education special call meeting keep in mind that we can make no amendments to the board's agenda because it is a special call meeting. So I ask you to get a motion to adopt the April 22nd, 2021 meeting agenda at this time.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved in second that we adopt the April 22nd, 2021 special call meeting board agenda. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Okay, the agenda is adopted. All right, at this time, I would like to share with you the mission and the vision for Craven County School. And as our mission, as our vision, we envision a public education school system that challenges all students as learners and prepares them to imagine and create a successful life, value educators, and empowers them to inspire and spark innovations in every student, leads in education and community engagement, and invites all students, their families, and all the members of the community to work together to support public school, public education to the benefit of our students, our community, our nation, and our world. Our mission, together with our families and community, Craven County Schools would educate and learn all learners to personal, professional, and civic success through challenging and personalized instruction. And at this time, we'll ask our administrative assistant, Ms. Myra Flower, to lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't think we need to, I get you back up for a second.
Ground rules. Okay, our ground rules for the meeting are to post and approve the agenda, listen as an ally, one person speaks at a time, respect each other, everyone participates, stay on task, start and stop on time, schedule appropriate breaks, evaluate at the end of each meeting, and if everyone can make sure your cell phones, electronic devices, anything that can ring, beep, can be silent or vibrate now. If we were to have a tornado drill, we'd split the room in half between Mr. Silvera and Mr. Lee. To the right, we would go into the interior hallway. To the left, we'd turn around, go into the interior hallway, get down, cover our heads, protect for a tornado drill. We split the room the same way if it were a fire, and we'd exit into the parking lot on the right and into the furniture store parking lot on the left. If we were to have an intruder in the building and they were not in the room with us, we would secure the building, inform the building of what was going on, and call for help. Stay till we're all clear. If the intruder's in the building, we're going to do everything we can to alert, to inform, and to counter any threat that we have, and to take care of each other as best we can.
Okay. Thank you. And at this time, we would like to recognize any elected officials and leaders who are participating in this meeting electronically. We appreciate you listening in with us, and we hope that you will learn something from what we are about to do today. Dr. Dorr recommends that the Board of Education receive as a presentation on the urgent facility needs for the Board of Education to consider for Craven County Schools, sites, and operational facilities. And at this time, Dr. Dorr, we turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board. I want to acknowledge a couple of things as we begin. First, I'm going to repeat part of a presentation that the board all received in individual meetings or 2x2 meetings in the last couple of weeks. But we're repeating that for the listening and the viewing audience today. I also want to make clear that Craven County Schools has a big challenge ahead of it in terms of addressing the long-term facility needs in this district. The average age of our schools is about 1971. And we have 23 school sites as well as several other operational unit buildings to include the building that we're in right now. This meeting today will be a true workshop in that we are going to ask you all to interact with the information that is going to be presented by both myself, but mostly by Mr. Jeremy Russell, our Director of Facility Services. You'll see tools that hopefully you recognize around the room, and that's going to help us to continue to refine the very daunting needs that our district has as we work with the board to try to get to an adopted plan for Craven County Schools. We also have some staff here who will be participating in listening, but the feedback that we are soliciting is at this time from the board. I'm going to start with making a presentation that has a few more additional slides that summarizes what the board has said in those smaller group meetings collectively together, the voice that you all spoke from in those meetings and how it's informed the process that we've selected for today's hopefully narrowing exercise. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And again, this may take a little bit longer than we all want, but I want to make sure that the community hears the very same message that our board has heard, and that we are clear about not just the needs, but the multiple challenges that we have in trying to address those needs. And actually, hold on one second. So we have gone through a pretty lengthy process to assess our long-range facility needs. So we've conducted an assessment that began really now 2 years ago. Those needs have encompassed all of our campuses as well as our departmental units, as I mentioned previously. That timeline began in February of 2019, where we selected a company, Smith Senate, to conduct the planning process. And they began with an assessment that lasted from April of 2019 to November of 2019. And what happened during that time was a representative from Smith Senate, Mr. Ed Gordon, went through all of our facilities, all of our mechanical rooms, took aerials of our roofs, talked with various experts about what he was finding, and then also met with principals. Every time he toured a school, toured it with the administration on that campus as well. He's also met with the board several times, and I believe that he is joining us by Zoom today as well. So Mr. Gordon, thank you for your assistance. We presented initial conditions to the board through the book, which is located on our website and is available for people to review. And I'll be highlighting a couple of the pages from that book as well. And it's under the facilities section of our Craven County Schools website, and that is cravenk12.org. We began to start thinking about prioritizing, hosted a number of community meetings in the western part of the county at West Craven High School, in Havelock, at Havelock High School, and in the New Bern area at New Bern High School. Right after that, of course, school changed for a bit, and that delayed some of our progress. However, we have continued to conduct these assessments, and quite frankly, it's given us some additional time to consider what options or examples of options that can be provided to the board. We're now to the point of reviewing, and we presented not just options, but those challenges to the board for every single individual campus. Today, the difference is the board will start thinking about whole grade spans of schools and whole attendance areas. So think of considering the elementary schools in the western Craven area or the middle schools in the New Bern area. So that's what you see on the charts around you. And the Board of Education is going to continue to narrow options to adopting a plan, although we are thinking that that's going to happen in the May, June, maybe even July timeline. The critical piece here is that the board has reached some consensus about the plan that they adopt, because then the next step is to forward that plan to the Board of County Commissioners, whose responsibility it is to provide for facilities in our school systems by general statute. I will say to the board that I met this morning, Mr. Russell and I both met with the county manager and just went over some really brief summaries of what we are confronted with and shared just a few of the slides in the presentation I'm sharing with you today. And so there is a good understanding, I think, from that point of view of the complexity of our work moving forward. Going back to the book that is posted on our Craven County Schools website, that again is a glossary of all of the needs of each of our campuses, but there is an executive summary of sorts at the beginning. And on page 13, all of the initial conditions are kind of added up, and this is the deferred maintenance portion of the initial conditions. And you can see that amount of deferred maintenance at this time is a pretty significant amount. I want to make sure that folks are clear that no one is saying that we have got to fix all those deferred maintenance at this point, but we are saying that this represents significant challenges to not just the operation of our schools, but also the environments that our students and our staff are in. And you can see that that's broken down on that page by individual school site, but it's also summarized on this slide by attendance area or grade span, excuse me. In addition, the potential and the need for additions or renovations on particular sites is also summarized on the page 15 in this initial assessment. Again, the same thing applies here. No one is saying that everything here has to be done. However, it does include all of the things that we should consider as we think about bringing our facilities up to Department of Public Instruction facility standards. Again, it's broken down by grade spans and provides a total there. I do want to make sure that it's noted that inflation is referenced in this slide, and that is a real concern, not just inflation in terms of the economy, but also the inflation of costs of materials because of the significant amount of construction that's happening right now in our country. And so that will increase our costs for building. There's also a system summary, which is on page 23 in the book, and it's actually a fold out, much longer document that provides a red colored cell in that spreadsheet that is kind of a designation of a warning. And when you see multiple warnings on a particular school site, that's an indicator that there are multiple challenges to the building envelope, structure, instructional environment, core capacity, that type of thing, and the ways that the Department of Public Instruction assesses our schools. Which brings us to the most significant challenges in terms of those red warning signals is that we have multiple schools on this list that have significant challenges. You'll also notice on this slide that most of those schools happen to be in the New Bern area. That does not, though, necessarily mean that that's where all the challenges lie, and you'll see why in a second. Also, as we have been working over the last several years on K-3 class size legislation, we've had to consider how that K-3 class size has reduced the operational capacity of our buildings. So now that the ratios for kindergarten, first, second grade are lower student to teacher ratios, that means we need more classrooms, in some cases for the same amount of children, which reduces the amount of children that can then fit in that full building. And you can see, because we have schools already that were small, this has just made their operational capacity that much smaller. And as a result, we have 9 elementary schools out of our 15 that have an operational capacity of 312 students or less. As we know, enrollment has been decreasing for some time. Really since the recession, and you can see that there was a peak during the recession but that enrollment has changed and dropped since that time and has been impacted by specific events in the last several years and processes and decisions that we have made to try to make efficient use of our facilities. In addition, we have forecast attendance, and you'll see these forecast numbers will show up updated on the charts that you have around you, and Mr. Russell will review those. But the green line is our elementary. You can see that we're in a phase where our elementary enrollment is supposed to be low based on birth rate and military force readiness in our area, as well as red signifies our high schools, which seem to be also kind of in a dip phase, and then our middle grades, which is supposed to be at its height, but will then begin to follow the elementary school enrollment patterns as those students move up into those grade levels. Every time I've shown this slide, I've added another school in terms of the fact that we have smaller schools. What I've put on this slide is what the enrollment was in, or the membership was in 2019-20, which is on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, you see where we are currently with membership. In some cases, we have gone up. We've increased the number of students in a particular location, but for the most part, we're staying steady or we've decreased in some areas. And again, these small schools represent a much larger proportion of human resources, which is the largest part of our budget, our operational budget, which then creates some inequities in terms of support staff or instructional support staff to student ratios in buildings, as well as the amount of dollars per square foot it takes to maintain those buildings. Challenges also exist with the historical placement of schools in Craven County. In this slide, you see Havelock, and you see up in the top half of the page, and I'll just step over for a minute and reference the locations of Graham Barden, Arthur Edwards, and Gerganus. Which are here, up there at the top, and then directly across Highway 70. And again, that's just one example. Here you have 3 elementary schools in a small, 2 elementary schools in a small proximity to each other. And these small schools, in addition to being close to each other, are also small. And so it is, again, taking a higher proportion of operational resources to operate those schools. The same challenge exists in the New Bern area. As a reminder, the slide that was provided previously showed that many of our challenges in terms of the schools that have the most issues are in the New Bern area, and that is also complicated by the fact that these schools are also very closely very close geographically, and you can see that has affected how attendance boundaries are drawn, but it's also impacting, again, the resources that are allotted per school. Just as a reminder to the listening public, or even just as information, most of the dollars that we receive come from the state of North Carolina, and all of those dollars come based on an allotment from our average daily membership. And so we have, for example, 13,000 students roughly in Craven County schools, and those 13,000 students are divided among 25 campuses. When those students go to that school, generally those resources follow those students. And so when I talk about the amount of dollars per school that are being spent, there are some economies of scale when you have a little bit more students that would allow you to have maybe more instructional staff, classroom teachers, versus other expenses that we are having to pay for that aren't just human resources, but also resources to support those buildings and the operation of those buildings. This is an example in the Havelock area between Arthur Edwards and Graham A. Barden Elementary, 2 schools that are very close in proximity that have similar administrative support in terms of the assistant principal, counselor, and front office staff, but drastically different enrollments in terms of the number of students that are served. But you can see that both of these buildings are very old, one of them approaching 70 years. And both of these buildings are experiencing significant challenges with regard to their mechanical and HVAC systems. So in a situation like this, we would have the opportunity to maximize our resources if our students could be divided a little bit more evenly. And we could use some of the funds that we expend on things like extra positions in smaller schools. And they're not extra to anyone because everyone gets, for example, a front office receptionist or a bookkeeper. But if we have a bookkeeper at one school for example, 250 students, we also have one bookkeeper in a school of 600 students. So again, I want to make sure that folks are understanding that I'm talking about pure cost of human resources and not about moving people out of positions. We have more than enough opportunities. And as you see, when we get to the facilities in general, it's going to take a great amount of time in addition to resources to begin whittling down the gargantuan list of tasks that need to be done to fix these campuses, which is going to give us the time to reorganize staff as we need if decisions are made by the board to make those types of adjustments.
Dr. Doyle?
Yes,
Could
please.
you please clarify for people that might be watching at home that these salaries are not base salaries?
So these are average salaries that are, most of them are, I think, are posted on the Department of Public Instruction and include their benefits. So thank you for asking that question. But this does represent the full cost when you include their health care, their retirement, and those types of benefits as well. Thank you. But you can see that that's a pretty large number. And as we think about those small schools, those are opportunities for us to consider some adjustments. As a reminder, the Board of Education established 3 broad priorities with regard to adopting a long-range plan. One was equity, and that is in terms of resources and the support that we provide to our students and our staff. Instruction, which included innovation and technology, particularly as we look to creating facilities that are going to not just give us a return on investment now, but well into the future. We have to think about how technology and facilities are going to change, and then safety and security. And you'll see these priorities come up, and these priorities hopefully are in you as you start thinking about where your preferences are for some of the different options that could be considered. I want to remind the board, but tell the public, that the board has received another notebook that has each of our schools and has an option A, an option B, and an option C in it. Those options just represent choices that could be made with regard to beginning to move those facilities to better repair, better operational performance, and ultimately, hopefully, to get to DPI standards. In option A, mostly, we are just trying to meet K-3 class size requirements, making sure that the basic building envelope and structure is improved, which can include mechanical and plumbing, ADA upgrades, windows, ceilings, paint, and lighting, as well as security, which most of the time does include a security vestibule unless it's already been created, and we've done that at a couple of campuses. A fire alarm upgrades where we need that at most of our campuses. Other code and safety improvements, furniture, equipment, and technology. Option B includes those option A improvements, and then begins to start making improvements on the exterior of the building. So in the first option, really most of the work was contained inside. In the second option, most of the improvements are on the external part of the building, and then some additional interior. You can see that could include parking and driveways, canopies. There's a lot of that in some of these options for B, because many of our students are traveling from parking lots into schools and getting drenched if there's any kind of rain or inclement weather before they get into classrooms, which doesn't make for a great start to learning. electrical and plumbing, continued safety considerations, and then starting to think about core area like cafeterias and media centers, furniture and equipment. And then finally, option C is where the board starts to seek real improvements that would be visible to the occupying students and staff and the attending public, which could include renovations or additions, or if it's the will of the board, replacement of facilities. So I've provided 3 representative schools: Arthur Edwards Elementary School for an elementary representation, H.J. McDonald Middle School for a middle school representation, and West Craven High School for a high school representation, just so the public knows what the board has seen, but for all of our schools. Arthur Edwards, this is an example of the assessment of what option A would provide on that campus. You have a diagram in front of you that shows really no additions that you can see, and that's essentially because all of the improvements are interior. You will notice when you walk in, once there's some improvements, because there'll be difference in the lighting on Arthur Edwards campus. That's definitely a need. You'll see ADA improvements in restrooms and ramps. You'll see the addition of a security vestibule, and you will start to see furniture and equipment. Again, though, we have not changed the square footage of the classrooms. We have not changed any square footage of the core areas like media and cafeteria. You'll notice that for this school, just making these basic improvements is a pretty large number, $5.5 million, or estimated to be that. Option B, you begin to see those exterior improvements, and that's what you see on the left-hand side in the different color. And you see that the total cost is $11 million. The public, the board has asked these questions. At what point do you start thinking it's more cost effective to consider a new facility? And that's where option C comes in, is when you start thinking about just holding the building for the foreseeable future until it's the time of this building to either be replaced and for students to move. And there still has to be some investment in that building, one to ensure that it is taken care of in the interim, but also that it is removed in case it needs to be put or replaced by another facility. And so although this number is much smaller, it actually means that we have to build another building or do significant additions to other buildings. H.J. McDonald is a really great example of some of the major challenges. H.J. McDonald Middle School was built, I believe, in the 60s. It is a building that was an open concept building. It currently serves approximately 800 middle school students, and the classrooms in H.J. McDonald Middle School are all connected, but not by hallways, just by doorways. And so if students in one classroom have to leave the class during instructional time to go to the restroom, they are walking through someone else's instructional space, through someone else's classroom. And this is happening all over that campus for 800 and some odd students, which is not an optimal learning environment because it means that there are constant instructional interruptions. And if you know anything about educational research, you know that that is not good for learning. You can see that option A at H.J. McDonald Middle School, again, there's no appreciable, visible exterior or even interior improvements beyond windows, ceilings, paint, and lighting. But it is $15 million just to make those basic improvements. When you start to think about option B, you add a canopy and start doing some abatement of the flooring in this building. And I should mention that this building is in an area that has flooded pretty regularly. It also needs a great deal of work because they're settling in this building and the foundation needs some assistance. Then you are at $21.5 million. And so again, as you start thinking about what options are available for this campus and what is going to be the best return on investment long-term and wanting to provide a place for these students for decades to come, it begins to make more sense to consider thinking about replacement, which is what option C includes. And then finally, at West Craven High School, you can see the option A. As a reminder, of course, our high schools serve the largest number of students, our comprehensive high schools in our district. And so they are going to have a larger cost in general, as our middle schools will have higher cost than our elementary schools. Option A at West Craven High School represents about $7.7 million in just those basic upgrades. Option B at $13 million, and then beginning to make instructional improvements and enhancements to the career and technical education program, to the athletic facilities in terms of an auxiliary gymnasium, and you can see other improvements adding on to the cafeteria to ensure that the kitchen area can serve the core capacity cafeteria. You see that there's a cost there of approximately $31 million. As the board met, they came up with multiple themes, but these themes came up for multiple groups of board members. So one of the primary things was trying to eliminate temporary buildings because they represent a significantly different learning experience for students than what's happening in the regular buildings. They also represent an additional set of costs in terms of electricity and running power and water to those buildings. And they're often not covered so that students, when they have to go out there, are exposed to the weather. Reducing the cost of operation of schools to improve facilities and instruction. So trying to be the most efficient with our resources. Consolidating where it meets the board's goals of equity, instruction, and safety. Addressing ADA concerns. Focusing on equity and improving internal conditions for the students and the staff, and then providing a plan that provides the best longest term return on investment. So those are, again, the themes that the board came up with. As you all consider Mr. Russell's presentation as we move into that, those are the themes that I hope that you'll continue to consider as we move into the next phase. And Mr. Ipock, you have a question.
I wonder if you could speak to the rough cost of an elementary, a middle, and a high school to put it in context for the public.
Yes. So right now, the rough cost, and this is really rough because, again, construction prices are surging, but what we're seeing is anywhere around $35 million for an elementary school of about 800 to 850 students. Mr. Russell, correct me if I'm wrong. Somewhere between $45 and $55 million for a middle school of approximately 800 students. And then high school, we have not really contemplated necessarily, but I would totally be guessing by saying somewhere between $60 and $80 million. And I think that I just heard recently that there was a high school built in the western part of the state, and the cost for that school, which was probably a large school in terms of the number of students served, was around $85 million. And that's the challenge that we face in Craven County Schools because it's been so long since we built anything new. The last time that we built something new was either Creekside or Bridgeton, and that was 17 years ago. I can't remember which school is the youngest. Creekside, thank you very much. Before that, before those two schools, it was in the previous century. And so we have deferred a great deal of construction that probably is needed in order to improve our conditions over time. And there's been such a long time in between significant improvements. We've got a great deal of work to do, but we also have the opportunity to do some things that are timed and scope that work over a 10 to even 15 or 20 year period. So with that, I'll take any other questions. All right, I'm going to turn it over. I'm sorry, Ms. Clark.
I just want you to emphasize, Dr. Doyle, and thank you for your presentation, that we're not going to make a decision today about anything.
No decisions are being made today. And hopefully the public has heard that this is very complex because we have unique opportunities in Craven County Schools that have to be addressed. Today, we're trying to start narrowing options that we'll be continuing to provide to the Board of Education as we move forward.
Sorry.
No, please.
No, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay, the board is going to use a couple of tools, tools that we've used before, just so that we can see the energy around specific examples of plans that could be addressed in attendance areas, West Craven, New Bern, Havelock, and grade spans, elementary, middle, and high school. Okay? Nobody's voting today. We are not asking for any action. We are just asking to figure out what the energy is on some of these options that would be available. Did that help, Ms. Clark?
Yes, ma'am, I understand. I just wanted the public to make sure they understood.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other questions? All right, then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Russell. He is going to do a part with elementary first. We are going to take a break after he does the elementary because that's the largest group of schools. And then we will do middle and high school after that. And at the end, I'm going to come back and get a brainstormed list from you of some next steps. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Doyle. That was a perfect introduction to my presentation. All right. Good. All right. Thank you, board members, for having me today. I'm going to start off kind of following in where Dr. Doyle left off with the long-range master planning, I'll call it, and giving you some options and examples for the discussion. And that's what this is a discussion for you all to see the different ways that we can put all the information together that we have compiled and talked about for the past year when we first presented this information. So back in early 2020, late 2019, the long-range facilities needs assessment was completed. Early 2020, it was presented to the Board of Education and to the public with public meetings in each attendance area for folks to come out and see the needs of each location that we had in our system. Then, over the past few weeks, we have had individual meetings with you discussing the options A, B, and C, as Dr. Doyle showed the three examples. This one happens to be Ben Quinn, which is really small, but I was just kind of reminding you all the three options that we had. And that's what we started taking and breaking down these three options into examples of how you could take these three options in grade span and attendance area and group those together and make them work for the amount of students that we need to serve. So as we get into elementary schools, the first area that I have on here is the New Bern area. And I will zoom in. I've got three different examples for this area. Yeah, I do. I have it here, but it's not showing up on the screen. I can get the presentation mode, I guess, and do it. All right, we'll try this way. That's not doing it that way either. There we go. This will have to work. All right, can everybody see that? I know it's not as large as we would like it to be. So example one of the New Bern area schools. I've chosen just random, well, not random options, but options that I think would be viable. Not to say that any of these are examples or options or things that need to be done or must be chosen. These are just examples that we can use. So A.H. Bangert, option B is to do the deferred maintenance at a tune of $8.3 million. Indy Quinn, option C was $11 million to do deferred maintenance, add a multipurpose room, and add classrooms to increase the capacity. Bridgeton Memorial Elementary was to do the bare minimum and retire for this particular example. Creekside Elementary was to do deferred maintenance and add classrooms. J.T. Barber was option A, and that was to do the deferred maintenance, minimum deferred maintenance, and potentially change the use to a pre-K or a magnet type school. Oaks Road, option C was to do the bare minimum and retire. Trent Park Elementary, option C was to do the bare minimum and retire. And then there was two new options of two new 800 student schools, one being in New Bern and one being in James City. So what that gave us in the end was a new capacity of 2956, which met the needs of our future capacity.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
I can barely hear you sometimes, so those who are listening, they can barely hear you sometimes.
Okay,
So
I'll try to move this closer.
Okay.
All right.
As they said, you have to use your outside voice.
Okay. All right. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go through these examples and to get you to understand how I created this spreadsheet. And then the small descriptions on here are the same type of description that were on in the book that you have in front of you from the A, B, and C. It's just a very toned down version of it. So after I go through these, all the elementaries, we'll go through the New Bern area, the Havelock area, and then the Western Craven area. Then we'll have you all get up and look at the posters on the board, and we'll do a small exercise of getting you to kind of see what you like about each one of those, okay? So example 2 in the New Bern area, I'm sorry that you can't see this very well, but A.H. Bangert is, again, the minimum deferred maintenance. Indy Quinn was option C, which was deferred maintenance, adding a multipurpose room and adding classrooms. Bridgeton Memorial, option B, was to do all of the deferred maintenance in the building and keep it open. Creekside Elementary was deferred maintenance and add classrooms. J.T. Barber, minimum deferred maintenance, change the use to a pre-K. Oaks Road and Trent Park both were bare minimum maintenance and then to retire the buildings. And then one new 800 student building in the city of New Bern. Again, the goal is to get to that new capacity so we could meet the DPI standards. All right, example 3 in the New Bern area is A.H. Bangert, and this option is you don't have this option. I've kind of made this one up. It is A minus, which just means we'll do the bare minimum and potentially retire it. Indy Quinn was an option C, deferred maintenance, multi-purpose room and add classrooms. Bridgeton Memorial was option C, was to do the bare minimum and retire. Creekside Elementary, this one is another one that we kind of made up, which is a C plus. Basically, we would do deferred maintenance, add classrooms, and add a large addition to absorb some of the Bridgeton Memorial students. And that would end up being a 1,000 student capacity elementary school or close to. J.T. Barber was an A, minimum deferred maintenance and potentially change the use to a pre-K or a magnet. Oaks Road and Trent Park are a bare minimum and potentially retire. And then there were 2 new 800 student schools, one in New Bern, the other one either in New Bern or in the James City area, kind of to be determined. So all of these have totals at the bottom, and they're large numbers as we have talked about in the past. What I did see that the constants in the New Bern area are to retire or change use of JT Barber, Oaks Road, Trent Park, and build a new magnet. Deferred maintenance and renovations at Ben Quinn and Creekside are a necessity. And then the variables here are what to do with Brenton and how it affects Creekside. Now, again, this is just me putting down some things on paper so that you could get an idea of how we could take that book and utilize those different A, B, and C options to make them work. And so what we're looking for is feedback from the board to tell us if is this the right direction? Do you want to go a different direction? Is there, other options that you have? I hope you do have other options and other examples that we can add to this. Okay?
Mr. Russell,
Yes, ma'am.
I know what retire mean, and everybody in here knows what we're saying when we're saying retire. I'm not really sure that the listening public know exactly what we're saying when we say retire.
So we would no longer use that building.
Okay.
I have a question. So what has the feedback been from families to have an 800 student capacity elementary school? Are they interested in having a school that big?
After we get the board to narrow some options, then we will begin to get feedback about individual plans, which will include some of that feedback as well. Because this, as we've said, has so many different variables, it would be very difficult to put all of those options out to the public. And so as we get things more narrowed, that's part of what we're going to ask at the end of today's meeting, is to get you all to help us think about when next and how to communicate these options and where we want feedback in the future from our community to adopt this plan ultimately. So thank you for that question.
Okay. Any other questions in the New Bern area right now? All right, so we're going to go to the Havelock area elementaries. So example number one, AWE, option C was to do the bare minimum and retire the school. Graham A. Barden was option C, to do the bare minimum and retire the school. Havelock Elementary is a C+, and basically we were adding more classrooms to that to absorb the retiring of a couple of different schools. So that was why that is a C+. Roger Bell is a C-, so that was deferred maintenance, adding classrooms, do minimum upgrades on the interior, and perhaps not do the stage in the multi-purpose room, which was listed in option C in the book, just to save some funds there, because they already have a nice sized multi-purpose room, which the other three schools that are exactly like that one do not, so that would make them equitable. WJG, option A was to do the minimum deferred maintenance. And then I have a question mark in here about change use. The reason being is that's why the Havelock Elementary has a C+ in it, because Havelock Elementary is a lot newer school. WJ Gerganis is a great school, but it is landlocked and there's no way to add capacity to that school. There's a swamp behind it and there's a railroad track in front of it. So we really, the capacity that it's at now is about its maximum. And as we're talking about wanting to try to shy away and to do away with the smaller schools and to get equitable schools, 500, 600, 700, then that has to be a thought anyway. It doesn't have to be a decision, but it has to be a thought, I think. Example 2, AWE option C is to do the bare minimum and retire. Graham A. Barden is option C, do the bare minimum and retire. Havelock Elementary option C, which is deferred maintenance and add a wing to add the classrooms, which would increase the capacity to 576. Roger Bell is option B, deferred maintenance and to add mobiles. I know we don't want mobiles, but for this plan, that's what we would have to have. WJG is deferred maintenance and add the multipurpose room. That's another one of the schools that has the small multipurpose room. And so to have equity in those elementary schools, then we would need to add that multipurpose room. And you'll see with this particular option, we still have 2 schools that are just barely over 300. One school is at 576, and then we would also have the new school at 800, which is essentially, from what we have kind of determined, would almost have to be built on AWE's site, current site. So there'd be some scheduling there to figure out how those students would move and be able to retire AWE's building, demolish it, and then build a nice new school there. So our constants at Havelock are retire AWE, Graham Barden, and build a new elementary. Also having some type of a major addition to Havelock Elementary School, which makes sense because it is one of the newer schools, and it was designed to be added on to. So it has the capacity to accept another wing for more classrooms. The variables here are Roger Bell and W.J. Gerganis. Any questions or comments in Havelock so far?
I think I've got one. Well, how long does it typically take to build a brand new school?
From design through walking in the
All
front
of
door,
it, turnkey.
it would take a couple of years. I mean, and that's after you get the funding. Because there's a lot of upfront design work that needs to be done. And then in this particular case, there's demolition, site work, and then of course, building the new school.
Mr. Russell,
Yes.
just for clarification for the public, it might seem a little incongruous that we would spend $1 to $2 million on a school to retire it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the purpose of that? Why is it necessary?
So that is safety and security items that we feel like it would need to be done to last that couple of years while we are either building the new school.
So bare minimum to get us by for
Correct.
this, probably a year to get funding and then 2 years to get a school built, 3 years.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Clark, is this the period, Dr. Doyle, where I get to make a comment about my concern, or is that coming at a later stage?
You're going to actually get a chance where you see the deltas up here to put concerns up there. So if there's specific examples that you want to make sure that you lodge concerns about, that by all means, that's when you'll have a chance to do that. But by all means, Ms. Clark, if there's something you want to add, please do.
When we get to equity, I'll talk, when we get to equity.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move down to the western area schools. All right, example 1, Bridgeton Elementary is one of the newer schools. So option B is strictly deferred maintenance. They don't need any additional capacity. James W. Smith, option C is deferred maintenance, add a multipurpose room because theirs is very small, and to add a few classrooms to increase their capacity. Vansport Farm Life is deferred maintenance, add classrooms, and to add multiple enclosed canopies and some restrooms to the gym. So currently right now, the students who are dropped off get dropped off at the gym, and there's no covered walkway to get into the school from the gym to the cafeteria. So this would be an enclosed canopy that would allow the students to maneuver between the different buildings at the school.
I just
Yes,
had an enclosed canopy was added at Vansport Farm Life.
It was, it goes from
cafeteria
the,
to the library.
yes, yep. So this would connect that all the way out to the gym.
Good proof of concept.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Just so the board is aware, all of these examples are in the back of your blue manuals that you have in front of you. So you can see them there as well.
So example 2 for the west area, elementary schools. Bridgeton Elementary, again, is an option B because it's a fairly new school. Just needs some deferred maintenance. James W. Smith, we put this one at a C minus, basically deferred maintenance, add the multipurpose room, but not any additional classrooms to not add any additional capacity. At this time, they don't need it. In the future, we don't know, but at this time, they do not need it. Transport Farm Life at a B, which is deferred maintenance. Now, that would include a covered walkway between the gym and the cafeteria, but it would not be enclosed. And I have an example 3 for that area, which again, Bridgeton Elementary is a B, just strictly deferred maintenance. James W. Smith is a C minus, which is deferred maintenance, add the multipurpose room, but not doing any additional classrooms. Vansport Farm Life is a C minus in this one, which is the deferred maintenance, the gym restrooms, and the enclosed canopy. So I put those in there because I know that the community uses that gym a lot. And so the restrooms for that gym would be an ADA compliant restroom for the gym. Okay. Any questions in the western area? Okay, so here's where I think would be a great time for us to take a look at the posters on the board. The elementaries are on this wall. So on the far left are the New Bern area elementaries, the middle is Havelock, and on the right are the western area elementaries. It's the same spreadsheets that I've just shown you. So what we would like you to do is there's dots at your table. If you'll take a dot and put it on whichever example that you like the best for whatever reason. And then there's pluses and deltas. If you'd like to write on sticky notes, your positives and negatives about each one, then that way we can take that feedback and hopefully continue to narrow down this process for you.
We go now? Yes.
Yes. And if you have any questions, just flag me down. I can come over and explain anything.
And we're supposed to do them all or just our area?
Just elementary, but all the elementaries, yes,
All
ma'am.
elementary.
Yeah, only on this wall, so you're not on this wall, only on
Just
this
on this
wall,
one.
yeah, with the flag, yep. Right here. This. And then it, and then.
You can write that on there. You're right below the color square.
Where do we put the dot?
Right below the color rectangle.
Like right there?
Sure.
Or, oh no, you mean like there?
No. Right below the color, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's just the top total.
Thank you. I like issues. Yes.
So just correct me, remember, Mike's still live. Because we're still in the
So folks, in addition to your dots, you also want to put pluses or deltas. Like if you like a plan, but you'd like to do one thing to make it even better, put a delta.
Leon, I have to ask you a question.
Okay.
Stay there.
Sorry.
Antoinette. Yes.
Timothy mics are still live. Yeah, he's got you on camera. It's pointed right at you.
You tripped me, did you? He was like, I wanted to ask you one question about is then you think like the most deserving kid lives across the street. She doesn't know. But she she's number 3.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
So he has 2 assignments now, so we have one that he currently
Yeah,
has.
absolutely.
We have one.
I mean, we had
Our
that.
session assignments as well.
But we had
Does
that.
he want Miss Craven, Miss Moore? Does he want to keep going?
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's not a problem.
Okay, okay, so we'll just get back to it.
Yes, dear.
Real stuff.
Yeah, me too. So, yeah, between waking up, going this morning, and then getting late today. Yeah.
Okay, you know where the post office is? Yeah. It's in the shopping center, directly across the street. And, as
Because it was so good. They brought me a little tray of I can, you guys speak to 2 winners.
yes, we will.
I'm sitting here quietly.
Yes. Yeah. You might wake up here. Yeah, yeah. Yes. I'm glad you did that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Between that and farm table stuff, that's, I mean, she got 2 big things happening in the same week.
I'm here for all for you. If you do not, you can send it back to me in the hospital, and you can do the switch, and then move it.
Okay.
So he thinks that he got another one too.
Yeah, that's what we were, that's what we were told.
Hold on, let me double check with him. He's been using 9 o'clock. No, he did not get it.
Okay, we'll just get the other back over.
Okay.
I think probably out of Ross or Mike has it right now.
Can I explain to you what it was?
No, what was it? I'm curious.
Oh, yes.
Filter is what you exist on.
Yeah.
You actually have none that you set. So.
Once we finish this, Mr. Russell,
13 of the week.
we can take a break once we finish this. Do I need to announce it that we on a break?
It's not for us to have something on the certificate.
No problem.
So,
Okay.
so
That's fine.
sort of where.
Just call me anytime.
You just had good luck of being where you were. And that's what we said. We couldn't.
Wednesday.
So there are one thing to consider.
Yeah, she.
The one issue.
Sounds good, thank you. Saturday's fine. Friday, Saturday is fine, okay? I'm always available. I make time for it.
So it sort of ended up being the very first thing. It wasn't security,
It just wasn't.
it wasn't what it wasn't.
That's crazy.
It was because, you know, you have
That's what
something,
you told me.
Yeah.
and I have something in my house. We took Dylan's iPad from your house to my house. It didn't work at your house, it worked at my house. I'm like, really? Something.
Yeah.
And it same thing happened with.
It's tomorrow's last day.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's last day, right?
Because we thought we had two.
The food.
Today.
Yeah.
No.
No, Mary. Oh, yeah, how about?
The cheetah bean.
Mr. Seville?
We get it for you.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you,
Well,
thank
you
you.
might want to announce it.
For 10 minutes? I call this meeting back to order. I'm going to ask Dr. Dorr to take over, please.
And I'm going to turn it right back over to Mr. Russell to start middle schools.
Okay, so we'll get into middle schools, following all the good work that you did on the posters for elementaries. So our first area, we'll start with New Bern area again. So example one, New Bern area middle schools. Grover C. Fields, option C, was to do the bare minimum and retire. H.J. McDonald, option C, is to do the bare minimum and retire. So that would mean we would need two new middle schools in the New Bern area. Two 800 student middle schools to replace the two older retired. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask, when you said, are you talking about on the same locations where they are now? Would that be?
That would be determined later. That's an option to put them on the same location, yes.
So it is an option. You could, there's room at both of them to put, okay.
There is.
And let me add that there's a premium of land in the New Bern area. So there are not many other options besides using existing sites.
All right, so example two that we have is Grover C. Fields was in option B, was to do all of the deferred maintenance. H.J. McDonald was in option C, was to do the bare minimum and retire. Then we would have one new middle school in the New Bern area. Option three was to do Grover C. Fields, option B, do all of the deferred maintenance. H.J. McDonald, option B, was to do all the deferred maintenance, the interior reno, and the enclosed canopy. No new middle schools in New Bern. We do have an option four for the middle schools. Grover C. Fields as an A plus, which was the minimum deferred maintenance and a roof that is going to need to be there within the next 10 years. H.J. McDonald was an A, which to do the minimum deferred maintenance, but to keep them both as is. Okay. Any questions? All right. So we'll move on to Havelock Middle Schools. Havelock Middle School, example number one, option C, is the bare minimum and retire. Tucker Creek Middle, C plus, which is the deferred maintenance in the school and major additions to accommodate the students from Havelock Middle School. We would combine Havelock Middle and Tucker Creek into one school on Tucker Creek's campus. It would be about 1,000 student middle school. Example number two, Havelock Middle School would be option B, all the deferred maintenance. Tucker Creek Middle, option B, all the deferred maintenance, keeping them both as is, but doing all the deferred maintenance needed. Example three would be Havelock Middle School, option B, doing all the deferred maintenance. Tucker Creek Middle, option A, which would be minimum deferred maintenance, but keeping them on their same site locations. Any questions in Havelock? Okay. So we will go to West Craven Middle. West Craven Middle is pretty easy because we have an option C, which is in the book, option B, and an option A. So option C is all the deferred maintenance, some renovations and additions, which would include the auditorium and some other CTE style classrooms. Option B is strictly deferred maintenance, and option A is minimum deferred maintenance. Okay. So since our number of schools is much less middle and high school, we're going to group those together. when we do our boards in the back. So we'll go on through high school and early college. New Bern High School. Example number 1 is option C, which is deferred maintenance and all the major additions that were in our initial option C book, which that was the auxiliary gym, the not multi-purpose room, but the auditorium, CTE classrooms, covered walkways, and multiple drives, a lot of large additions to that school. So I chose a B+ option because New Bern High School does not have an auditorium, and the other 2 high schools do. So to keep in with that equity, I thought that we at least needed to try to provide them with an auditorium. So the B+ is basically the deferred maintenance and the auditorium, some parking and drive improvements, and a canopy. I also did an A+ option, which is the minimum deferred maintenance and just an auditorium. So at least they would get that auditorium to be equal to West Craven High and Havelock High. All right, in Havelock, we had option C, which was the deferred maintenance and all the major additions. Option B was deferred maintenance and a canopy and some parking and drive improvements, but none of the large additions, which are the auxiliary gym and the CTE classrooms and increasing the capacity of the kitchen. Option A was just the minimum deferred maintenance. All right, West Craven High School is going to be very similar to Havelock. Option C was deferred maintenance, large renovation additions. Option B was the deferred maintenance, canopy, parking and drive improvements around the campus. And then option A was the minimum deferred maintenance. Okay, any questions on the high schools before I go to early college east?
Jeremy,
Yes.
so I can't remember some of those CTE court classes that we wanted to build at the high schools. They consist of those big open bays, or any of those big open like shop spaces.
So
Because for
we haven't gotten into
CTE,
the weeds that deep yet.
those things are kind of like gold.
Right.
Those for like welding, automotive, auto collision, HVAC, they really require those huge open type shop spaces.
Right. So this is basically an outline right now. So when we get to the design phase, once there's a plan adopted, that's when we would decide what those spaces would look like for CTE.
Okay.
So at that point, we would start talking about, do we want those large open spaces, or do we need a culinary arts kitchen, or do we need HVAC type training places or welding shops? Or okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Early college east. So it's a little different than what we initially talked about because of the option A and B. Option C is still the same. That would be to do the deferred maintenance on the small admin building that they're in now, and to utilize the 6th grade pod of Havelock Middle School, if Havelock Middle School, depending on the choice that the board makes for Havelock Middle and Tucker Creek Middle. So that was example number 1. Example 2 was option A, which is just the deferred maintenance in the little small administration building that they're in. And they would continue to use the wing of Havelock Middle that they're currently utilizing for class space. Option 3 would be the deferred maintenance in the small admin building, and then also some additional deferred maintenance in the wing of the existing Havelock Middle School space that they're in. So we would not use the 6th grade pod. We would continue to use that, the wing of Havelock Middle, whatever the outcome of Havelock Middle was. But to do the renovations for just deferred maintenance in that wing would be this number, which is $928,000. Okay. So That's all I have for your middles and highs. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. If you if you move HMS or merge it with Tucker Creek and have early college east go into the 6th grade pod, they're already occupying what used to be the 7th grade pod. What would you do with the remainder of
Well,
those buildings?
The idea is we would not need the 7th grade wing anymore. We would only need the 6th grade pod. So it would be a renovation to that building. That building is in pretty good shape. It's got a new roof on it. It's got 3 new HVAC units on the roof. And so we feel like we could renovate the interior of that space to accommodate early college east and their curriculum.
So what would you do with the rest of the building, and demolish it or just leave it empty?
So one idea that we've had is depending on other decisions, if we needed somewhere for our students to go, say AWE, if we needed those students to go somewhere while we demolish that building and build a new school on site, that would be a great location for them to go to for a couple of years. The other option is to build a mobile farm, which I don't think anybody really wants to do that. So, moving those students out of Havelock Middle into Tucker Creek, obviously we'd have to do renovations at Tucker Creek first. Move the students from Havelock Middle there, and we can move the students from AWE to Havelock Middle. And it's a big jigsaw puzzle that we would try to have to put together. But that was one alternative that we thought about. All right. Any other questions? So we'll kind of go through the same exercise. There's 4 posters for middle schools because I had 4 options for the New Bern area. So there's 2 posters for the New Bern area, 1 poster for West Craven Middle, and 1 poster for Havelock area. Then there's 3 posters for the high schools and 1 poster for early college east. So we'll put your dots on any of the examples that you like and give us some plus deltas and any feedback that you have.
Let me add one more thing. There's a section on each of the charts that says actions required. So for example, we had a board member who wrote under one of them that we would have to consider some redistricting for a decision, so that you all are thinking that those decisions may have to come at some point. So some of these options do force us to make decisions like that. So those actions that you think are required, by all means, either write them on there or put them on a sticky note and put them on that section. We want to make sure that you all are thinking about that, and we're hearing that from you as well.
This is yours. You're welcome.
Thank you. That was easy.
For I gathered.
Well, that's the one that has the sheet, but I don't know, what doesn't care minimum. I have got the honestly, I don't know what else. So, what do you want to make sure that, what do you want to make sure to capture about? I like that. You know, have to be farmers. Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, I agree. So when you say equity, do you segregate? So what is so we'll see today. But at some point, that is correct. Thank you. Yes, yes. So that one way to get I like the so there's this one that has an auditorium, canopy, and this one, I think it gives correct. I'll come in. Thank you. That one? No, this one has. But they don't have any one of those that's like major additions.
Let me double check. Jeremy.
Mr. Russell.
Mr. Russell. Mr. Russell. I just want to make sure. This one here does not have an auditorium, right?
No, it does. That has everything.
That has everything.
These two things will go well.
I didn't do it. I just put major.
So-
I see there.
That's what I call.
You're not up here.
ADA everywhere.
I thought about that and I would say.
Can I just
That's why I did.
You know what, they're gonna say that, right?
We can take some of these kids.
Yeah, you can-
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking you got the idea.
I know.
I think you got the.
Only three have done this. That's what I'm saying. Only three have done this.
So that's not your public property.
Did you put it on?
These would go, some of them would go here. The other part of them.
I mean, did you put it on? Did you put it- which one? The one with-
I drive it over here.
Okay, you were on. Do you want everything?
This, no matter what we do, it's the most complex.
I realized we were going to be on camera the whole time. I would not have more distress. Our roles are showing.
The dress is perfect.
Thank you.
You wear church on Sunday, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I had meetings today.
Oh, it's
I
pretty
had
good.
this morning, chamber thing.
You did all right.
Damn.
We can look like professional. We can look like good all the time. My grandson said, "Nana, you bougie today." Now,
But this. I don't know what that means. You're gonna. Okay. Okay.
he said, "Because you don't look like that right now."
So board members, I sincerely appreciate you engaging in this exercise to give us some feeling for the energy that you have about specific examples or options that we can then start putting in front of not just you, but also for public input and feedback. I would like to take a few more minutes and get from you some things that you want us to consider as we start moving forward with creating those options, but then also trying to gain a little bit of public comment on those options. So I'm going to go back to the back of the room. I might need to take a microphone with me and record your brainstorming and then try to do a little bit of prioritizing with that. Any questions about that? All right. Thanks. So if board members, as you all think about, and a couple of board members have said as we were working with these tools today, the charts, that certain things need to be communicated as we start considering options. I want you all to just brainstorm for me, and I'll record on this chart paper what those things are that you think that are important that our community understand as we start moving forward to narrow this plan.
One of the things that I talked to you about was school size. So if you have an 800 student school compared to a 500 student school, if there's not a huge difference in cost in that, it would be more economical in the long run to go bigger than go smaller to allow for growth. And until you grew into that school, that would give you some availability possibly to put some creative arts or even some STEM labs or career-based courses, even for some of our elementary schools, to maybe even expand CTE, which would prep them for middle and high school. You know what I mean? To kind of navigate that way.
All right, so does this capture school size considerations, understanding the difference between cost versus size, 500 versus 800 as an example?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the public should be aware of what that cost difference might be, because I mean, if it's only, I hate to say a couple of $1 million, but if you're looking at 35 million for an 800 student school compared to $30 million for a 500 student school, then
There's your answer.
that when the money is that much, that's not a huge gap.
Right. All right. What else would you like us to make sure that the public understands, our families and community? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Clark.
I had
I'm sorry.
Okay. Some of these plans, Dr. Doyle, might require redistricting. Second option, as we talk about perhaps redistricting, some of these schools perhaps could become magnet schools. And I'm connecting magnet schools with equity.
Yes, in the United States Department of Education definition.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I've got one piggyback off of Ms. Muse's discussion on size. I think it would be good to have comparisons that you've shown us about other school districts and the sizes of their elementary schools. And also, we have two really great examples of large elementary schools that have worked really well. Bridgeton and Arthur Edwards at one point was up at 900 and a waiting list to get in. So, larger schools, elementary, can and have worked really well in our system. So we want to make sure that we spotlight how they can work. In Havelock, we would really need to communicate early and clearly the benefits of consolidating two middle schools. The benefits of that, we want to do that early. And I think it would be helpful as we start talking about a magnet in Newburgh to relatively somewhere along the line, quick decide what kind of magnet that is, get some input and decide on what kind of magnet that will look like so the community can get excited about the possibilities it'll offer.
It would also provide us some opportunity to expand pre-K to get kids started earlier.
Right. The number one need.
Yeah.
If there is redistricting, we talked about this in my meeting. I think families should be able to be provided the availability to see the new school that they're going to, do a field trip of sorts. So, they'll have buy-in to it. You know what I mean? So they should be able to walk campuses and experience what it would be like for their child to attend.
I added a little bit there, but just that if redistricting, families should be able to tour, have decision-making about mascot colors, etc. Anything else?
Just that, J.T. Barber did a historical school, something that we can use here, that we mentioned about preschool. We probably could use it, one that would benefit the community.
And I think a suggestion might be, I know we'll go back out to the communities again, but I think doing exactly what you guys did today, which I think is great. This will be recorded. There's a link for them to see the plan. Each step that we do that, I think it might be nice to have a point where they can put comment in that. If somebody might see something that we've missed in one of the communities. So I think giving early input would be good. A link on one of these, either on the recording itself or on the facilities link.
There's availability on the YouTube videos, I think. So as people watch it, they can comment. So maybe the comment section was left open.
And I think relatively early, we're going to have a plan for people that start asking what we're going to do with the retired land, retired facilities, and how that will work. You know, how we put them up for sale, how we do whatever we do. I think that's going to need to be communicated fairly early on.
And I think we need to be very clear in explaining the reason why it is necessary to retire.
If there could be a section maybe on the school website, on our Craven County Schools website, where there could be like a link and, some of the pictures that you guys have taken, because not all families in Craven County see all schools because their children don't go there. So like, where you have the pillars in HJ and the base of the pillar is here, but the floor is here. You know what I mean? That's pretty significant. So if some of these photographs that you guys have could be shared, so that way people throughout the county can look and say, oh, okay, well, my child doesn't go to this school, but these are the issues that they're talking about. And then that way, because when you see it, you have a better understanding of it. Does that make sense?
Is it this blue book or the big white book that's on the website?
The big white one.
The big white one, you just pull from that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what I see that distinguishes this effort from work that I'm familiar with from the past is that this is a look at the long-term need to solve the issues that we have in our communities, equity, balance, resources, and things of that nature. The approach that has been used before, and I don't remember all the discussion around Newbern High School, but I'm sure that was long thinking rather than short thinking. But for the most part, it's been dealing with what you have and how do you tweak it to meet the local need, which is very different than visioning for what is it that we ultimately need for Craven County for all of our students. So I'm very encouraged by it. It has a big price tag, but in the long term, it's the least cost approach. The second thing I would say is that anything that we can do that increases our capability for early childhood, because we know that that's where it starts. We've got gaps today, and it all goes back to disparity between offerings for families and children early. So the idea that J.T. Barber as an example could be an early childhood magnet, and we could be the county that offers early childhood to all who need it, I think would be a wonderful mission.
Thank you.
And we had talked about in the group that I was in with Chairman Boomer and Mr. Ipock, if we could show a cost analysis, because, we had talked about combining some schools in Havelock, the cost effectiveness to the county to operate this many schools compared to this many schools.
And there are things you can't measure well, it'd be hard to measure that cost effectiveness, because like having all of the middle school students in one area allows, just say like Valerie Nasser, to address all of the military middle school students, to have those resources in one place, those kinds of things that might not have a dollar, analysis, but are actually really get the opportunity to improve services to our students.
I would just add to that, it's always been sad to me that we take some of our highest valued folks and put them on the road for half their day, which means that they're not, face to face all the time. If there are any ways to consolidate those kinds of efforts, be enriching for all our students.
Anything else?
No, but I think you really should, think back, and I'm, you have to write this down. This is the first time, I mean, I've been here 18 and a half years, and we have looked at 5-year, we've looked at 5-year before. We've looked at a 5-year plan, we've looked at a short-term plan. This is the first time that we have looked at a plan this comprehensively, and I really appreciate it. And it's good for the community to know that it's different than what we've done in the past, because it's, just what Carr said, long-term, it's so much more comprehensive than we've done before.
Anything else? All right, and we will use this as we start to gain additional comment from the community, but also as we communicate and you get further down the road with adopting a plan. And so we will keep the board updated about the strategies that are being used, as well as the feedback and the input that we receive to help inform your decision-making as well. All right. So that concludes our items for today, Chairman. And so, any more questions? You might have any more questions. If not, I need a motion to adjourn this meeting. Actually, Chairman, can we do an evaluation? Do you mind if we do an evaluation? I'm thinking, when you're right, I'm thinking of you. Yeah, we do. I'm asking about the board to conduct the evaluation. Okay. All right, board members, as we think about the mission of our school system, but also the mission of the board, what worked for you today in trying to achieve that mission?
The groundwork done before we got here with the big white book, with the 2-on-2 meetings, the groundwork to get here made it so much easier to understand.
I would also say the repetition, being able to review again or see again, because every time you see it, things reveal themselves. The flow chart, to give us opportunities to see things visual, to see it in perspective. Get all together.
All right. What else worked?
I appreciate that it's broadcast and recorded and the links are for the public to learn with us.
Everybody participated. Anything else? It could have been better if.
We had everyone here, but we understand.
Anything else?
I'm looking forward, well, I don't know if that's it could have been better than. One of the things that will come, of course, is we share with our county commissioners. And I see that as being critically important to kind of the big vision for Craven County, since education is such an important part of it.
Anything else? All right, Chairman, I have what worked, groundwork, the books, 2-on-2 meetings made it easier to comprehend. Repetition helps to be focused on important points and things, additional points are revealed. The charts allowed us to see things visually. Appreciate that it's broadcast and recorded so that the community can see the process. Everyone participated. It would have been better if everyone was present, understanding that folks could not be today. But also that we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to share this information with the Board of County Commissioners.
And another plus would be that because it's recorded, because you recorded it, you're not going to have to do this again for the 2 board members that weren't here, because they can go on and have a visual recording of the process today without having to duplicate it.
Very good.
Can we, this is well, just to make mention of the fact that we were able to give them suggestions for you all to move forward with the decision.
For communication. All right, so also because it was recorded, we won't have to repeat the presentation, able to provide suggestions for communication and sharing of information as well. I do want to just leave the listening public with one final reminder that nothing is predetermined, nothing has been decided. All of the options that were provided today are really the examples. We're just helping us to get to a point where we do provide some options to the board and then begin soliciting additional comment and feedback. So we will post these posters as well to the website Ms. Muse referenced, so that folks can see what was recorded and the dots and that kind of thing. I know that's probably hard to see from the video feed right now. That's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you. Any more questions? If not, at this time, entertain a motion that this meeting be adjourned. It has been moved and second that this special call meeting will be adjourned at this time. Thank you all and have a great day.